would like to call this meeting to order and thank you for joining us during our weekly hybrid MLS meetings. Those of you at home, we're having a wonderful breakfast this morning. My favorite as a former police officer, donuts. My name is Buck Stapleton and I'm your November program chair. Today, my wife told me I should dress like we usually dress at home when we go out to dinner. So please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Nancy, where are you? Nancy Chan with lawyer's title. And to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'd like to welcome Bob Chu with Champion Escrow, who will give us our inspiration quote for today.
Okay. Difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little extra. Jimmy Johnson.
Thank you. A little bit about me. I'm a commercial real estate broker. I'm also an author and California Real Estate Principles. And I've just been asked to send one of our great articles to our if you're and would like to make an announcement, please fill out the announcement form to my left and return the completed forms to Berlin. Thank you. A few housekeeping tips. All participants on Zoom will be muted. And John, you know why we do that. Upon entry to the MLS breakfast meeting. And should you have a question or a comment, please remember to enter it into the chat box. Please remember to join us weekly as we have our hybrid MLS breakfast meeting every Thursday at 9 a.m. As always, this meeting is being recorded and will be available online on our channel, San Gabriel Valley Realtors. Please remember to follow WSGVR social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you need help, ask your neighbor teenager. You can also watch all our pre-recorded videos on YouTube. Today's agenda consists of our affiliate host home and commercial inspections, as well as our guest speaker, Dan Yukelson, Executive Director of Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles. Back, okay. Our introductions will be brought to you by the Affiliate Committee Chair, Lena Sankari of U.S. Bank, and Vice Chair, Teresa Nguyen of Loan Direct.
So anyways, you're probably all very familiar with home inspections, right? Okay, and the most important thing for a home inspector to do for all the real estate agents is not to blow the deal, all right? Okay, most important, like if we're doing an inspection, I see mold on the job, right? I'm not gonna go, hey guys, look, there's mold over here in the corner. No, what I do is I take the agent, I say, hey, come on here. I have something I wanna tell you because this is water damage, okay? Or whatever the case may be, that you need to fix this, okay? Now we come back into the group and say, okay, we noticed we had a little bit of water damage that could be fixed. Most of the cases, the water damage will have mold, but you know, mold's everywhere on the side. It's everywhere in your kitchen and it's in your bathroom. So you can't really get away. But the good thing is if you keep your house clean and you're going to be in great shape. The other thing, two of the four-letter words that you want to hear is lead, right? That's a bad word, but because it's not really good for you to consume. But you want to kind of watch out for things like that. And what else is asbestos and those kind of things? They're not really a big deal because this is actually a big fire retardant. So if you have that in one of your older homes, it's perfectly fine. What you don't want to do is start sawing it or try to take it out and things and basic, and so you can get over. How many want to be able to get that inspection taken care of and get it done right away and not have any hassles? You've got the right guy. Okay. Another thing is our world that we live in, be able to try to think along the green line. Green line basically is what's good for the earth. Okay. So a lot of people are confused a little bit about solar and different things like that. Solar is actually a good thing, but you have to take time to do your investigation. Okay. Do I do the purchase with the lease agreement, or do I purchase or finance or whatever you want to do it? You always want to do the purchase, okay? Or if you're going to finance it, so you want to have a sale, you don't want to do the lease. The problem with the lease is it could cause a hiccup when you go to close that deal and the other person say, well, we don't want that. Okay, so you have to kind of think along those items. How are we doing on time?
About 1 minute, Bob.
1 minute. Okay, so anyways, I wanted to also share with you about taking care of your environment. I'm going to be talking just a moment about, laundry soap, those plastic jugs. Well, I don't know, the size of Texas, 3 times the size of Texas out in the ocean is floating plastic. Okay, Texas is a huge state. How many of you ever seen the size of Texas on the map? It's like the biggest state in the whole United States. So 3 of those and floated out in the ocean with plastic. So it's kind of important that we take our time to look for things to do to make our environment better. So if you have any questions in the future, I do have some brochures. I do a lot of things. It's kind of hard to cover it all in just a few moments of time, but I'd love to help any of you anytime I can. So thank you, Dave, for the spotlight, and thank you all for your time this morning. Thank you, Association.
Thank you, Bob. Please remember to support our affiliates with your transactions. We'll now have our affiliate introductions for today. All paid affiliates present today, please line up at the front. Please, no promotions or announcements. I'll be watching. This is a morning greeting only. We will begin with affiliates in person. Please limp up and when finished, walk towards the door.
One, he said limp up. Cosmo Sanchez with New.
With First American. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, everyone. Derek Talbert, Bird's Eye Management Services. Have a great day.
Good morning, Nancy Chan, lawyer's title. Have a wonderful day.
Good morning, Chang Byung-Bark Law, Business of Chang Byung-Bark Inc., Immigration Real Estate.
Good morning, Sue Chong with the Casa Management, wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Morning, James Wong from the Taylor Closet of Arcadia.
Morning, everyone. Esther Chow with HSBC Bank, and I also represent Area Gigantic. Thank you.
Good morning. This is Ken Shen with Transglobal Private Lending. Have a great morning.
Good morning, Jacqueline Chu from Champion Escrow.
Good morning, Bob Chu, Champion Escrow. Happy Thanksgiving.
Good morning, Melody Xu with Atlantic Escrow.
Morning, everyone. Alba Moy from Moy Escrow, Alhambra. Have a great day.
Good morning, everybody. It's Pearl from Siren Solar. May the sun not only power your house, but also warm you and your spirit.
Good morning. My name is Sam Yu, and I'm with Primerica Mortgage.
Happy Thursday, Lena Sankari from U.S. Bank Home Mortgage.
Good morning, I'm Phoebe Liu from Bank.
Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to have a very warm and Thanksgiving day. Thank you.
Good morning, David Tran with Home Warranty.
John Wax with Snap NHD. John?
Thank you, Buck. You did a great job this month. John Wax with Snap and HD Natural Hazard Disclosure Reports. Have a wonderful day and a fun and safe Thanksgiving.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very thankful for each and every one of you. Mark Wu with AMS Insurance Agency, still providing preferred homeowners and condo policy in this challenging insurance market.
The WSGVR Foundation is doing a silent auction each week, so please visit this. Like to pitch your listing, you must go to www.wsgvr.org, click on Caravan Request Form, fill it out, and submit it no later than the Tuesday midnight of the week you want to pitch. Today, we have 3 listings featured. We have Cecilia Hewen of Coldwell Banker George Realty. The floor is yours, Cecilia.
Hey, everybody, Cecilia with Coldwell Banker George Realty in Alhambra. This is my new listing. It is a commercial unit. Located 2019 Atlantic River in Yukelson. Location close is around based on the size of the unit. The unit size is 980 square feet. So, the HOA including water, common area, and security guard. So please come and call me to make appointments because the owner is still doing business for over 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Next, we have Henry Liu of Coldwell Banker. Okay. All right. Last but Now we have Elizabeth.
Morning, Elizabeth Joy Realty. I have Arcadia here. It's just and it's open. It's come by. Prices are 999,000. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and 2 ensuite, and 1677 square feet measured by appraisal. Come see today. New roof, new windows, new flooring, new paints. 2-car attached garage and long driveway. A lot of things. You got to see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. If you did not register for Caravan but have an active listing in the MLS that you would like to pitch, please come up now and pitch your listing. Please do not discuss commissions. You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Wow. Okay. Thank you. My name is Sylvia Ramos and I'm pitching for one of my agents, Helen Ma. She's here. She's wearing the cute red sweater, but she's a little camera shy. So she's a proud member of West San Gabriel Association, as I am. This property here, it is at 428 Jalek Avenue in La Puente. It is listed just a little bit below 800,000. It is a 5-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,073 square foot. Lot size is shy of 7,200. It is a 2-car garage built in 1960. Has been on the market for a little bit under 20 days. And it's an amazing opportunity for either a homeowner or an income property. It is pet friendly. It does have a fence. You don't have a picture here, but I have been in the property and I have to tell you, it does have a nice flow as you walk in through the front door. It has a really cute kitchen on the left. It has a nice gathering area. Don't know if I can say family. Gathering area, and it, on the right side are all the sleeping quarters. So on the right side of the sleeping quarters, you have vacant on Supra. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome our guest speaker, Dan Yukelson, known as Dan Y. Apartment Association of Greater. Read his introduction. He is currently the executive director of the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, AAGLA. As a certified public accountant, Mr. Yukelson began his career at Ernst & Young, we've all heard of that, the global accounting firm, and since then had served in senior financial roles, principally as chief financial officer for various public, private, and startup companies. Prior to joining AGLA, Mr. Yukelson served for 12 years as chief financial officer for Premier Radio Networks, a subsidiary of iHeart. Then 3 years as chief financial officer for Oasis Realty, West Realty, the owner of the Beverly Hilton and Waldorf Astoria Beverly Hills, where he was involved with the development and construction of the Waldorf. He also served 6 years as a planning commissioner, my condolences, for 3 years as a public works commissioner for the city of Beverly Hills. I would like to introduce Mr. Jens. This will be part 1 of 2 parts. Part 2 will begin at 10:05 a.m. this morning. Mr. Yukelson, please, Dan.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to be your entertainment for the morning. I'm very excited because I bought the winning lottery ticket this morning. You know, a lot of times when I get up and I do my little spiel for groups, you know, it could be somewhat depressing. People in the rental housing industry, highly regulated industry, and we face different for difference for federal law, and it's gotten very complicated. It's not for the faint of heart anymore. And we see a continued ratcheting down on these regulations, not only make it more expensive to be in the business, but a lot less profitable and a lot more risky. And so what I'm about to tell you, it could get a little bit depressing. I'll try to be a little bit upbeat about it, but sometimes it's a little difficult. And you can go to the next slide. As you heard from my bio, I'm not an attorney. I It's a second career for me. I've been doing it for 6 years, running a trade association that represents people in the rental housing business. It's more than just apartments, it's people that own ADUs, single family homes, et cetera. I consider myself to be fairly knowledgeable, but I'm not an attorney. So don't take what I say to the bank. Go seek your own legal and tax advice. I don't practice taxes either. And you can go to the next slide. As mentioned, I run an organization that's now been around for about 106 years, going on 107 next year. We're like any type of trade association, like your association here. We provide a lot of operational support. We have people standing by to answer questions by phone, by email. We have a library of forms for leases and notices. Whatever you need to be in the rental housing business, we provide that to you. We provide a lot of educational opportunities, member networking events. But probably the most important thing that we do for our members is we are government advocates. Yes, we are lobbyists. And we are at the state level constantly. I was just up meeting with some legislators last week, and we are in nearly 200 local jurisdictions throughout San Bernardino, LA, and Ventura County. And we have a local government affairs team on the ground here in our local area that advocates for us. And then we employ lobbyists up in Sacramento, and we contribute heavily to our national association, the National Apartment Association, that deals on the federal level. You can go to the next slide. And by the way, if you're interested, I do have some magazines from our association over there. There's some good articles, and may make your hair stand up, but I hope you'll take one. When I started this job about 6 years ago, and by the way, I'm going to go through this stuff really quickly, and if you want to stick around later for a more in-depth talk on these issues, please do. I guess I get an hour a little later. When I started this job, and looking at the bottom of this slide, there were literally maybe a dozen or so cities in Southern California that had rent control. That's exploded since then, and it continues exploding. More and more we see local cities throughout California not only imposing rent control ordinances to limit your pricing, but they're also imposing ordinances to put in various types of protections to keep rental property owners from remodeling their properties, from allowing property owners to move into their own properties or to take their properties off the rental market entirely. And so it's become to the top of that state, Korea, the outlaw rent control regulations by their state constitutions. Well, that's being fought in a number of these states. You may have heard in Massachusetts, for instance, there's talk about reversing that constitutional amendment and trying to implement rent controls in cities like Boston. So it's been very, very challenging. Renter groups are very, very active. When we go to advocate at a public meeting, our property owners are far, far outnumbered by the renter groups, and they're screaming a great slogan: the rent's too damn high. And they look at us, politicians look at us who own property as people who are wealthy of means. And so, of course, we could supplement people just because they're renters, irrespective of, how wealthy or how poor a renter may be. They get the benefits of rent no matter what. Today's environment, unfortunately, we just gone through 3+ years or so of COVID regulations. It was very difficult to execute evictions, if not impossible, in certain areas of Southern California, more particularly in LA County. As a result, a lot of rental property owners were left holding the bag of uncollected rent. And estimate of rental debt that's still over tenant town, never to be seen again or off during this. And when it finally on January 30th, 4 years, property owners were not able to adjust their rent pricing to some of the severe inflationary pressures that was 4 years. And as a result, a lot of people are getting out of this business today. People are going to other states. Delaware statutory trusts, if you've heard of those, are very popular for 1031 exchanges today. And so, and people are getting out of the business. Their properties are being rebuilt because people want to avoid all these regulations. And as I mentioned, we've continued to see regulation protections, and some have been tried and successful, some failed in cities like San Bernardino and Port Hueneme, where we were able to get enough rental property owners out there to advocate for their cause. So we were today's very organized these, and they've tried to get cheap rent. New regulations, sometimes craziest things in the world that just make no sense at all. Sometimes they're for, environmental concerns and things like that. I mean, there's actually various bills. And we saw a couple this, and I'll go into depth later in my longer talk. There are bills to limit how we screen tenants and stop allowing people to check credit. Imagine buying a car house without a lender, not being able to check your. They're looking those out on property check and in fact remove it from rent applications. Paying for rent. So what happens is property owners involved in an eviction case are just getting through the courts. Jury trials are being requested. It's elongated, gets more and more expensive, and property owners are basically forced to settle. And we get court settlements just so property recover their units and rent. So for being a bad act tenant, you walk with a lot of free rent and a few $1,000s in your pocket, and you go on your merry way, and it never hits your record. And it's just a growing problem. One of the worst ideas I've seen lately, and there's unfortunately a couple cities in Northern California that have passed these laws. It's called a TOPA, and that's a Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. You can imagine how this would impact your business. It's when a property owner of a rental property wants to go and sell their property, they need to first offer right to purchase that property to their tenants. Their tenants are struggling to pay rent, get the first crack at buying the property. So what happens is these properties are held up for 30 to 60 days while tenants try to figure out whether they can make an offer and buy the property, or if they can get or maybe the city government to come in and make an offer on this property so they could continue to live there and have some type of ownership. There's various cities that are looking to enforce or impose cooling in multifamily units. There's concern about global warming, and so they want to make sure people are comfortable. In the city of LA, we were wondering, gee, does cooling in multifamily, we have to put in ceiling fans? No, they wanted central air conditioning in all these old buildings that whose electrical panels probably couldn't handle that major load. We're seeing rent caps lowered all over the place. Santa Monica, Paladin-ish. And by the way, cities more than 3%, 60% of the whichever is lower. And we're seeing that, we just saw that in LA City because of inflation and the CPI being where it was. Owners were entitled to a 7% rent increase, but the city just decided arbitrarily the other day to lower it to 4%. And so after four years of no increases, decided to be allowed in city of LA appliances that heat, they want all put into rent. And as I'm sure they don't have upgrades, they're not on 220 volt or whatever it is. Our home sector to tell me when I upgraded my building's electric cost $50,000, cheap to do, and if it's property because you want to retire or downsize, there's severe restrictions for doing that, and it could cost tens of thousands of dollars for that pleasure. And we're seeing higher and higher fees. There's all these state mandates about trash hauling and diversion. In cities, we're all getting green waste cans today because we have to separate green waste. All that stuff is very, very costly. And so everything seems to be going up. There's some new state laws that just got passed that could raise the sales tax rate in LA County. You should know that. They're going to go over the current of 2%. And so it's been very, very challenging to deal with these risky regulations and these very costly regulations. How am I doing on time?
No, 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Wow. All right. You can go to the next slide then. Okay. There's a couple of new state laws that got passed this year. By the way, how many either represent people that own rental residential housing or actually own properties themselves? I'm just curious. Okay, great. I hope you're all members of our association. By the way, we do great work. You get to talk to me all the time, you know. So Bill 12, there were two really bad bills. And you should know the makeup of you know, the legislative session for this year. There are over 2,600 proposed. You know, if you wonder why it feels like we're over-regulated here in California, that's the reason why. We have 120 state legislators in the Senate, 80 on the Assembly. And you know, they just compete with each other. Everyone wants them on a bill. They want to get passed. And so it applied last year, and there were dozens of that impacted housing. You know, association of realtors put some great fights at the committee level, and we're able to defeat a number of these bills. But, you know, some of them got passed, and some we're going to see again in next year or the year after that. Some of the bills that were proposed for this year was the 5th time out that failed. You know, it's less. So the first bad bill there, and again, there are two really bad ones and a number of other bad ones. Assembly Bill 12. No longer can you charge more than 30 days for a security deposit, no matter whether your unit is furnished or not. You get 30 days. Now, there's a small carve out for tiny independent mom and pop owners if you own less than 4 units or less than 2 properties. And it's not spelled out in the bill. Own 2 properties in California and in Nevada that could qualify. Yeah, it passed. It got signed by the governor. Everything was, I'll be going to 17 unparking. So if you have a property with more than 6 units after 5, there is that maybe if you know you want to opt out parking because you ride your bike to work or something like that. So that's the reason for that. AB 1620. This allows a tenant with physical disabilities, permanent physical disabilities, to move to a unit downstairs if it becomes open. So you could have a unit upstairs that tenant's been living in for 30 years, hasn't been remodeled ever. And then the tenant sees, oh, you just got this remodeled unit that opened up. I'm going down there, and you have to give them the same rent that they had upstairs. I didn't tell you this would be a very big presentation. Senate Bill, oh, next slide, please. Senate Bill 267. If someone's on a government subsidy, like a housing voucher, Section 8, VASH voucher, you're really to check for that person. You have to offer them some other way to prove that they have ability to pay their portion of the rent. So you can't require that they undergo a credit check like we typically do with our tenants. SB 567, next one, another one. This one clearly under California state, what's called a no-fault eviction. So again, this would be for an owner move-in. If owners live in the property for at least 81% of the property, you have to be able to move in, or if you're 2 kids, only 1 can move in. If you're doing a substantial remodel, and then if you want building off the rental market, you have to take your unit off the rental market, you have to take the entire building off the rental market, which allows, and you don't subject penalties, and that's all new for this year. Senate Bill 712, the next one. This requires you to allow micro mobility device, allow your tenants to store them there and to charge them at your property in a common area or inside of the unit. Micro mobility device, it's electronic scooters and bikes typically. And so you cannot prohibit those types of things at your property anymore starting sometime next year. If you want to go to the next one. And I'll just go over these quickly because 5 minutes. All right. I'm making good on time. These are all the bills that failed. And they'll be back next year. You know, the first one, this was the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act that I mentioned. It's a right of first refusal. Senate Bill 460, we call it ban the box. They want to take off the question on a rental application. Have you ever been convicted of a felony? And they want us to accept the application, run the credit, run the background check, and discover that on our own. Senate Bill 466, I'll talk about this a little bit more with the upcoming ballot initiative, but if you're familiar with Propositions 10 and 21, That dealt with a state law called the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act, which provides exemptions from local rent control for certain types of properties, exempt single-family homes, condominiums, new construction. And it also allows us to have one rule in place that keeps us in business, which is what we call vacancy decontrol. When you have a vacancy in your unit, you can charge market rate rent. This bill would have restricted our ability to do that, would have put caps on a vacancy. It would have been what we would consider a bankruptcy bill for rental housing. Senate Bill 611 would have required all types of detail to be put into advertising for rental properties, including, different types of charges. If you charge for a key replacement, that would have to go in the advertising. You have to disclose every single possible thing that you'd be charging a tenant for. And if you don't disclose it in the ad, you don't get to charge it later on. Fortunately, that didn't pass. Senate Bill 863 would have done away with 3-day notices, making them 7 days. My question to the bill's author is, why not 10 or 30 days, while you're going that route? Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm being told to take questions. If you stick around for the longer one, I'm going to be covering some new bills from last year that you may have missed and talking about some of the upcoming ballot initiatives that we have to look forward to next year. They're very important. So anybody have any questions?
Just talk about the new bills will apply, after the timeline, right? If they cannot retro.
None of these new bills are retroactive. In fact, the one on security deposits, one of the things we were able to negotiate, beside the small owner carve out, was that it's not effective until April 1st.
April 1st next year, right?
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, if you're holding a 60-day security deposit or 90-day because you have a furnished unit,
right,
you're good to go. You keep that money.
Hi, good morning. Question here. I don't know if it's relevant to the commercial industry, but regarding commercial property, is a landlord required to provide heating for occupants doing in a commercial building?
I wouldn't know the answer to that. I know it's a habitability issue for residential, and you do have to provide heating in a residential, but I don't know about commercial.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your information. I have a question. Were there any good laws that passed or bills that passed for in favor of the landlords?
Well, the good bills, we got, a couple last year and a couple this year. There's a whole host of accessory dwelling unit ADU streamlining bills and some bills to streamline construction. We feel that the housing affordability crisis in the state of California is really a supply issue, and that we need to build more housing here. We have far too much demand. And so we've always been big proponents of building more housing and density in areas where it makes sense. And so we did get a few of those bills passed. The problem is our state legislators are, I have no other way to say it, but they're a bunch of wimps, and they don't want to preempt local law. And so, for instance, in my case, I'm trying to build an ADU at my property in Santa Barbara County. Well, it's supposed to be, fast and easy, but every time I turn around, there's a new local fee, a new local test that I need to do for a garage unit I'm trying to build so I could house somebody. And, it's gotten expensive and nearly impossible. It's been over a year and a half just to do 350 square feet. It's crazy. So that's part of the problem. And we are trying to push more preemptions, because local jurisdictions often get out of control.
This question's from online, from Nicholas Romo. A property under the TPA, do handicap tenants have any protections from being asked to move due to plans to complete a full remodel?
Not specifically under the Tenant Protection Act. That Tenant Protection Act became effective a couple of years ago. It's state rent control, also known as Assembly Bill 1482. But for the most part, local jurisdictions do provide those types of protections. So I know LA County for unincorporated areas and a whole host of cities provide much stronger tenant protections, much higher relocation fees for people that are seniors, people that have young children at home, people that may be disabled.
Regards to 1 month security deposit, can we add pets deposit or key deposit?
So I get that question a lot. Here's the deal. you're limited to 1 month of rent. So if you want to get a pet deposit, then you need to charge pet rent. So if you want to, have those types of deposits, then you're going to need to charge more rent.
Okay, this will be the last question. Thank you. This question's online from Kathy Cooey. Do Pomona City have rent control to increase rent now?
Pomona did recently pass rent control, if I remember right. And, I used to have all these regulations memorized. It's like either it's my age or there's just too many of them now. But I believe it's at 4% is the rent cap in Pomona. And there are restrictions on all types of evictions. You have to, it's called just cause eviction. If it's not listed in the ordinance, you can't evict for that. I mean, if you just don't like your tenant's personality, that's not a reason to evict them. You have to have a solid reason that's named in the law. And that was just recent. I think it was last year that passed.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Stick around.
Dan, and to access, find him, there it is, and magazines are over here. Presentation, and stick around for part 2. Attendance drawing. All WSGVR members are included in the attendance drawing, but not all can be displayed. You can see this, right? Part 2 will begin at 10:05 a.m. Remain on this Zoom link, those of you that are on Zoom. Of course, you missed the great breakfast that we had. Thank you for the poached eggs, whoever bought those. Okay, attendance drawing. All WSGVR members are included in the attendance drawing, but not all can be displayed. Today, our pot. Who brought pot? That's illegal. Oh, no, it isn't. It's permissible in California. Today, our pot is at $900. If we don't get a winner, $25 gets added to the total cash each week until someone wins. Pot will begin again at $25 when there is a winner. If for our last breakfast meeting of the year, we still don't have a winner, we will keep drawing until we have a winner. You must be in person at the association and a WSGVR member and dues paid. When your name is called, you must announce that you are present. If we call your name 3 times and you do not respond, you will be removed. Oh, no, we'll just move on. No exception. Jamie Sy. Jamie Sy. Jamie Sy, come forward. No, Jamie Sy. Too bad, so sad. We move on. Okay, our guest speaker will select 3 winners, Amazon gift card drawing from those that are in person. We will each receive $25 gift card, Amazon gift card. Okay, Tony Takram. Where's Tony? He's right here in front. Wake him up. And Helen Chi. And Alba Moy Escrow. Where's Alba? And where's Bob? Bob, you want to come up? We have 4 winners. Pearl Wu. Pearl, are you still here? Sunrun. No longer here.
She's still here.
Yes. No, you have to be present. You were not present. It says auditorium, right? Okay. Pearl Wu.
It's Bob by Bob.
Okay. Donald or Kathy Yu. Kathy Yu. Tate Chen. Tate. All right.
Okay, you want?
Let's see. Palm International. Kimberly Shi. Kimberly, come on up. Education classes. Please make sure to participate in our education classes. A list of upcoming classes is displayed on your screen and available on our website. 45-hour DRE license renewal continuing education webinar, Friday, November 17th, 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Cost is $85. Last week, somebody asked me if that was midnight, right? Midnight is the AM. Okay, Lone Wolf transaction, zip form education training when? Monday, November 20th, 2023, 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Cost is free. Meet and learn, remove environmental risks from the transaction. When? Tuesday, November 21st, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Cost is free. And CRMLS virtual training, realist taxed. When? Wednesday, November 22nd, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Cost is free. Okay, at this time, if you submit an announcement form, please come up and make your announcement. You have 30 seconds. Yolanda Martinez.
Morning, everyone. So we're 2 weeks away from the Charity and Scholarship Foundation live auction. So we're closed next week. We're down celebrating Thanksgiving with our families. But when we resume on Thursday, November 30th, we are doing our live auction. So there's many ways you can participate. You can donate items or pick up a new item and donate it, or bake something or put a basket together, or just be here present to bid on this. We need all of you to make this a successful live auction. All of this goes to the charities and the scholarships that we give. So please, it's very important. I kept my promise. I told you I was going to clean my house last weekend and go through the garage and the house and the cupboards. And I brought my piano. I brought a Yamaha piano. So that it says bid on me. I think we're starting at $150. You can start writing now, but it's going to be given, the live auction is going to be Thursday, November 30th. I also brought some brand new artwork. It still has the tags, some nice metal woodwork there to hang on your walls, and mixing bowls. I know Sil was kind enough. She managed to get us 30 items. So we're so excited about the items and everything that we have. So I hope to see all of you here 2 weeks from today. Thank you so much. I have a saying, it's nice to receive, but it's even nicer to give. Thank you and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
It is nicer to give because we're going to do the 50-50 raffle. And remember that WSGVR office will close at 12 noon on Wednesday, November 22nd, and will be closed on Thursday and Friday, November 23rd and 24th. It will resume business on Monday, November 27th. But also, please remember, next Thursday, we will not have a meeting, but 2 weeks from today, we will. All right, today's 50-50 raffle, $75. And the lucky winner is, there's no numbers, I guess I win. It's 294-319. 319. Call it off 3 times. All right, come on up. Take a picture. Breakfast meeting next week, November 23rd, in observance of Thanksgiving. Please join us the following week, November 30th, as WSGVR Foundation will host their annual auction, and we have a little surprise for you when you come in early. Thank you for joining us today. Part 2 will begin at 10:05, about 7 minutes.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to our part 2 of our tenant and landlord rights. My name is Jeff Wong with eXp Realty. I'm also your education chair for 2023. And we're really grateful for this month of Thanksgiving. We're really grateful as our guest speaker is giving us more of his time to share his experience and knowledge. I'm not going to go through his bio, but let's just say it's very extensive. We do have the MLS recording, and we do hope to release that, but it does have to takes care of the part 1. All right, so without further ado, because I want us to get more time with Daniel, without further ado, Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thanks for having me back. I'm glad you didn't chase me out of the building after my last presentation. I'm really depressed that I did not win that lottery. Darn it. All right. Well, how many people are brand new, just walked in for the education and weren't here earlier? Okay. Well, then if everybody was here before, this could be fairly quick. So, okay. As I mentioned before, or as was mentioned before, I'm a CPA by training. I spent most of my career in the network radio business, where I syndicated some of the largest national radio shows. If you've heard of Ryan Seacrest or comedian Steve Harvey, Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Fox Sports Radio networks. That's what I did. Negotiated all those contracts, and I was the chief financial officer. So I'm not an attorney, although I may walk and talk like one sometimes. You have to be very knowledgeable about the regulations and rental housing. So again, I caution you to please seek legal advice or tax advice from somebody who knows what they're talking about. And anything I say is not the opinion of my association or its members. Just need to clarify that. Our association, the Apartment Association of Greater LA, has been around over 106 years. It actually started in Long Beach in 1917. A group of women who owned rental property got together. There were rent regulations back then. There was actually rent control. The US government passed rent control around the two world wars for returning troops so they could have less expensive housing when they got back here. But the federal government knew, they were smart enough at the time, that these types of regulations, these types of price controls are only meant to be temporary, not to be in place for more than 4 decades, like, you know, we've had imposed upon us in various cities like Los Angeles and Santa Monica and Berkeley and San Francisco. And we are really seeing the effects of rent control today. In a city like Los Angeles, since rent control was passed in the late 70s, the city has lost 5.5 rent-controlled units per day. People get out of the business if you can't increase your prices to meet the soaring costs that you're dealing with. And so it's really led to housing shortages. We see that when we compare California to the rest of the nation. We are not keeping up with the housing supply. States like Texas and Nevada and South Carolina are all building sufficient housing. You look to a city like Sydney, Australia, they added hundreds of thousands of rental units in the city of Sydney over the past several years. And what's happening there is rental prices are actually declining. It's a supply and demand issue. And unfortunately, the people we put in elected office have failed to take Economics 101 courses. They just don't understand supply and demand. So anyway, this association, I've been there 6 years, and we provide a variety of services to people in rental housing, whether you're renting a bedroom, an ADU, a condominium house, or apartment building. We're there for you. And we provide all types of advice. We have a full library of legal form, virtually every type of lease form, notice, disclosure that you need to be in the rental housing business. We have a full-time general counsel who helps me keep all of our lease forms updated. And so if you're in this business or you have clients in this business, they really need to be associated with us. We also provide education. I host 1 to 3 hour-long webinars a week. And this week, we covered the eviction process. Yesterday, I had on a deputy district attorney who talked about all the crime issues that we're facing in LA County and the problems being experienced in George Gascon's office. Very, very interesting webinar, very well attended. And we offer a great magazine. Some of you have taken copies. I'm sorry I didn't bring more. And, it's 120 pages full of advertisements for different vendors that you'll need, but also a lot of important articles. Each month we update both local regulations and also state regulations, keep you apprised on some of the latest property management techniques. And you could also read my monthly diatribe where I complain about all these regulations that we face. We also have a number of discount programs that we offer our members, and you get membership in our state association and national association, all for free. But as I mentioned before, the most important thing is we are government advocates. We have a full-time government affairs team that are in city council meetings and talking to different elected officials' offices, the elected officials, their staff members, advocating for our rights as rental property owners. And it's become very challenging. We also have representation up in Sacramento. In fact, I go up there a few times a year myself to meet with legislators, and so forth and so on. So, if not for the resources we provide, it's very important to be a part of us just to help with our advocacy efforts. It's also very important to support your Realtor Association here and the California Association of Realtors, who have been fantastic partners with us when we've had issues across the state. Rent control, a very sort of famous Swedish economist once said that the rent control is the most efficient way to destroy a city except due to bombing. And very in-depth comment, but I tend to agree with that. After more than 40 years of rent control regulations here in Southern California, what do we got from it? We've got housing shortages. We've got skyrocketing rents because there's too much demand for the limited housing that we have. And we have a major homelessness problem. People that can't find housing. Now, why is that? It's because our supply is so limited and we don't have the resources to deal with some of the issues surrounding homelessness. So we have a lot of problems, and we see that in other cities that have strict rent control. If you drive down Ocean Boulevard in Santa Monica, or San Francisco has been well publicized in national news, same up in Berkeley. These cities have had decades worth of rent control regulations are pretty much a disaster. And as I mentioned, there's, relatively few states, only 6 out of 50 that have rent regulations. And unfortunately, California is one of them, and it's continued to grow and grow year after year, sometimes month after month. We're kind of, it seems like we're always facing off against a city council that's looking to impose some type of rent control or some type of very costly tenant protections where you have to pay thousands of dollars to recover your unit because someone's not abiding by their lease agreement. And it's just been a big problem for us. And most of the states prohibit rent control. 33 of them out of 50, in fact, prohibit rent control by their constitution. And there's 11 that have no preemptions, but they don't have rent control in those states at all. And as I said, there was about a dozen or so cities that had rent control in California when I started this job 6 years ago, and it just keeps on exploding and exploding. And more we hear threats about cities looking to impose some type of rent control regulations or tenant protections. I mean, even a city like Cudahy, which, I grew up in the LA area, I had not heard of Cudahy, but they imposed rent control recently. And cities like Pomona and Alhambra has been looking at some type of rent control. So they put in tenant protections and various other things. So very challenging for us. And it's hurt a lot of people's investments. Why do people get into this business? Because they want some additional income or stable income during retirement. And, the past 4 years, because of all these COVID tenant protections, have ruined people's retirements. They've had to come out of pocket, liquidate savings to keep their buildings afloat while they weren't collecting rent from their renters. And we saw a number of horrific examples of owners being taken advantage of these past 4 years. There were tons of stories. And, I reached out to, we have 10,000 members, and I reached out to our members and asked for their stories during COVID. And while some owners weren't collecting rent, some cases for a year or two because of all the COVID protections, they may have been friends with their tenants on Facebook and saw pictures of their tenants traveling. One guy traveled all over Europe while he wasn't paying rent. Another person went to every national park in the United States, and they would see Teslas showing up in the parking area and Audis and all these expensive cars. And there were a couple of examples of tenants who didn't pay rent for long periods of time. They banked enough rent money to be able to put a down payment on their own property, and then they skipped down on the owner and never to be found again. So, we would explain all these stories to elected officials who impose these types of regulations. And, while they would give us a sympathetic ear, they really didn't care at the end of the day. It was all about the tenants. It was all about their pandering for votes and getting reelected and latching on to that golden public pension that they get at the end of their term. Anyway, the Wall Street Journal came out with an article that said over $1 billion of uncollected rental debt is owed for the Los Angeles area. And our association has estimated just in LA City alone, which has had a rent freeze that finally expires January 31st, that about $3 billion in lost rent increases were caused by that. And, that's caused a lot of severe strain. I'm sure everybody here has dealt with all the, as they called it, supply chain issues. It's hard to get labor out to do work, hard to get supplies. The costs keep going up. Everyone has seen the cost of gas. And on top of that, today we have a major insurance crisis. Who has recently renewed their insurance policies on their property? It's a disaster. And, people are getting 50% or more increases on their insurance premiums if they're able to get insurance. A lot of carriers have left the market because it takes over 3 years sometimes to get an increase in premiums for these insurance companies. What's allowed to happen, and I just learned about this because I met with the deputy insurance commissioner in Sacramento last month. there's these what's called interveners that step in and they fight the insurance companies on increases. And so it takes forever to get them passed. And they go and they try to limit the amount that can be increases, but yet these insurance companies are facing huge disasters with all the fires. And, of course, we have no lawsuits here in California and all these habitability claims. And so the cost of insurance has skyrocketed if you could even get it. And what's happened to a lot of people is they had to go over and get insurance from the state of California. It's called the FAIR Plan. And the rates are sometimes tripled in those cases. There's somebody I met recently who has a house in Beverly Hills. I know Beverly Hills, but he's paying $120,000 a year just to insure his house. It's ridiculous. And when we met with this deputy insurance commissioner, he wanted to tell us, about his understanding of the crisis. But in his mind, it only related to single family homes. We had a rental property. He didn't realize that. The governor has issued some executive orders to try to avert this current insurance crisis we're in. And this deputy insurance commissioner told us the greatest news in the world. They're working on it, but they don't expect to have anything until the end of next year at the earliest. So we're going to be in this for a while. And a lot of people are getting requests from insurance companies that they don't have the right electrical panels in place. And, these things are expensive to replace. And if you don't have the right manufacturer, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars. They want pipes replaced. They want wiring replaced. They want your plants cut back from the building. They're making all of these different requests. And if you haven't replaced your roof in the last 10 years, you're probably not going to get a renewal. If your building's a certain age, you're probably not going to get insurance. You're going to have to go to the state or go to Lloyd's of London or something similar to that and then pay through the nose for insurance. So major crisis that we have on our hands. And, as I talked about before, there's constant threats, constant ratcheting down on different regulations. That just makes it a lot more challenging to be in this rental housing business. And part of the problem is, and, we have, and I use city of LA as an example, because that's like the worst of the worst. We have 15 council members and 3 of them are declared democratic socialists, and they have no respect for people that own property. It's their belief that housing is a human right. And, I believe people should have a roof over their heads. No one should live on the street, but at what cost? Is it my cost to provide free housing to people? That's the type of thinking. That's the logic, some of these elected officials have. And so they're constantly looking at ways to take away any rights we have in property today. And so what we have to do is we need to get these people unelected. When I look across my membership and, a lot of times the perception is, oh, you own property, you're a bunch of, corporate people. And, that's absolutely not the case. The reason I had my first apartment building is because my grandmother, who was an immigrant, came to this country and wanted to subsidize her housing costs. And she saved and worked like crazy with her sister. And they bought an apartment building and they had a couple tenants, and it helped them get by and helped them put my mom through school. And I see that across our membership. We're from all walks of life. We're recent immigrants, we're retirees, retired police officers. We have the whole gamut, and you walk out on the street and those are our members, but they think we're a bunch of, special, wealthy people. And we're not. We're people that are often struggling to get by. They're like me. I have a full-time job, and that's how I support my family. And my rental properties, the few units that I have, are there to help support my retirement someday. And so they need to, let us live a little bit and let us breathe sometimes. So if you need me to get off a soapbox, by the way, just let me know. So again, these new laws, Assembly Bill 12 limits these security deposits to just 30 days. That thing starts on April 1st, 2024. And there is a small carve out if you own 4 or fewer units or less than 2 properties. I should say it's an and. It has to be, if you own 3 properties but only 4 units, you don't get the exemption. So you just need to be careful with that. This Assembly Bill 548, I made it in light blue because it wasn't for the shorter discussion, but this is basically an allow any government agency to come out and inspect your property. And if they see an issue, they're going to call you to the carpet and you're going to have to deal with it. So it's really more enforcement and more inspections that the state's going to be requiring. And if your tenant at your property reports an issue, whether it's true or not, the state is required to go out and investigate it. So it's just more hassling of property owners. What we've seen in different inspection programs is the inspectors, and no offense to people that aren't non-government inspectors, but the ones that work for the cities, they want to stay in business. And so they come out and they find anything that they possibly can. And so owners get written up for, chip paint. They've gone back in some cases and looked at original permits of buildings constructed in the 1920s and say, oh, well, this wasn't permitted. Well, the person who owns it now for 30 years bought it like that, and now they're forced to deal with it. So any kind of ticky-tacky thing. Earlier, I mentioned this unbundled parking. If you have a building built sometime after a date in 2025, that's 16 or more units, you cannot rent that building unless you unbundle the parking. You have to rent the parking separately from the dwelling unit, and you no longer can put them together. Assembly Bill 1620, that allows somebody with a permanent physical disability to move downstairs at the same rent that they're paying. Now, it needs to be a comparable unit. The state law doesn't really define what is meant by a comparable unit. We think it means that if you're moving from an upstairs 1-bedroom to a downstairs 1-bedroom, then that's sort of comparable. And so you get to pay the same rent. It doesn't take into account whether the unit that they're moving into has recently been remodeled or has better appliances and different things like that. But we look at this as just another opportunity for an unsuspecting owner to deny this request and then get sued by their tenant. It's unfortunate. Assembly Bill 1679, thanks to Miguel Santiago, we could all look forward to higher sales taxes in LA County. So you can look for that. I've never met a legislator that didn't like a new regulation or additional tax. And so we're going to get more of them here in Los Angeles County. Senate Bill 71, we like that one. It raises the limits on small claims court. So if your tenant owes you rent, you can go in and seek a higher amount. So that one is at least good. We did support that one, but most of these we opposed. Senate Bill 267, if you have somebody getting a housing voucher from a government entity, you cannot necessarily use a credit report to determine whether they can afford to pay the rent. You need to offer them the right to provide you with some other type of evidence that they have the ability to pay rent. So it's another thing that slows down the process of getting a unit rented. What we typically see when a unit is available to rent, obviously depending on the area, there's usually pretty sizable demand, and this will just slow down the process of an owner being able to find a qualified tenant for their unit. Senate Bill 567, this is the limits being placed on what we call no fault evictions. This is where owner wants to do a substantial remodel, and this requires all types of disclosures to the tenant surrounding a substantial remodel, an explanation of the work that's being done, and also requires you to provide every single possible permit, material or immaterial or otherwise, a copy of those permits to the tenant before any work can commence and before you can evict the tenant. It also requires an owner move-in to be there for at least a year, and you have to be on title for 51% or more of the property, and it only entitles you to one unit. So if you have multiple children, which some of us do, then you are out of luck. And if you would like to Ellis Act the building, again, the Ellis Act is a state law. It always amazes me that we had to pass a law like this, but if you're in a business and losing money, this allows you to get out of the rental business. It's incredible that California felt a need to pass a law like that. I mean, if you're losing money, you should be able to get out of the business to save your shirt. But this would require you to take all of the units off the market before you can Ellis Act the building and get out of the rental business and maybe redevelop the property or convert it into condominiums or something like that. And again, all this takes place April 1st, 2024. So you have time to act on your owner move-ins. if you're not subject to some other local regulation that has controls over no fault evictions. Senate Bill 712 is the micro mobility device bill, which requires you to allow people who may have an electric scooter or electronic bicycle to not only store them at your property, but also charge them either in a common area or inside of their unit. Unfortunately, these micro mobility devices do catch fire at times, depending on the type of battery. There is something in the bill requiring a certain type of United Labs, is that what UL means? United Labs type of battery, sanctioned battery, for these to be allowed. And so this is something we're going to be updating our lease agreement with before it becomes effective next year. But look out for that. All right. So as I said, we are major advocates, and we typically partner up with CAR and also a couple of other associations around the state through our state lobbyist. And these are a number of bills that did not pass, fortunately, but you will see them again next year, I'm sure. Particularly this 919, which is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, the right of first refusal that you'd need to offer to your tenants when you want to put your building on the market. Certain cities, that requirement is that tenants have 30 to 60 days to make an offer to purchase your building and get their financing together. It would need to be a bona fide offer. But again, it slows down the sales process. If you're wanting to do a 1031 exchange when one of these laws are in place in your jurisdiction, I think that could become pretty problematic. That could really slow down your process and make it even more difficult to execute a 1031 exchange in the 180 days. Assembly Bill 1035, this only relates to mobile home parks, and we fortunately defeated that. We did not want a regulation out there that limited one type of housing to just a 3% increase, because what would happen is it would just spill over to any other type of housing. Fortunately, we were able to get this one knocked out. Assemblymember Lee, he's a new guy, declared Democratic Socialist. He was a staffer for the predecessor in his district. He wanted to impose a wealth tax on all worldwide assets. That was like a 25% wealth tax. I don't know how he thought he would collect that, but that was shot down. And fortunately, Governor Newsom stepped up on that immediately and helped get that defeated. But I find it scary, the mindset that some of our elected officials have, particularly in Sacramento, that they think somebody would be happy with a worldwide wealth tax and such a high rate. It's just crazy. There was a bill by this Senator Skinner to create yet a new agency for all of us to love and enjoy, that sole purpose would be to create affordable housing. And how would they do that? They would raise money by charging us more in property taxes and other use fees. Fortunately, that didn't go through. That's the last thing we needed, was another bureaucracy in California. I mentioned this ban the box, which would have restricted our ability in screening tenants to ask about past criminal convictions. A threat to the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but fortunately the Senate bill, which would have started chipping away at Costa-Hawkins, did not make any headway, but I'm sure Senator Wahab will be putting this forward next year. She's an ex-union organizer, and so she's looking out for labor at all times and really has no respect whatsoever for people that own any type of property. Senate Bill 611 would have required excruciating detail in rental advertising, including every type of possible fee you could ever imagine that you would charge. I always use the example of a lost key. If you're going to charge $25 to replace a key, you'd have to put that in the advertising up front. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to charge it. And that was the thought process behind that. It's always that the renters are just being mistreated somehow and being overcharged for every nickel and dime thing. And so these elected officials in Sacramento just come up with all these crazy ideas. And then Senate Bill 863, as if it doesn't take long enough to get an eviction done in California, it could take up to 6 months in court, and then another 2 months to get a lockout from the sheriff's department in LA County. I think it's a little bit faster in neighboring counties, but they wanted to extend the 3-day notice to 7 days, which just would have caused even more pain and suffering to property owners who need to collect that rent so they can pay their mortgage and their property taxes. It's just really not fair, some of these proposals, but I'm sure we'll see that again next year. I wanted to cover some of the laws that got passed last year, just in case you didn't attend one of my sessions before and you may not have heard from me on it. So let me just pull out this one piece of paper so I could see it better. You know, it used to be nice when I could actually read a screen like that, but you know, age does catch up with you. So, you know, I get a lot of questions about this first bill. You know, there's, you know, when renters want to bring some type of pet animal into their units. And you need to know, and you need to take a class on this if you're in this rental business, but there are three types of animals we deal with. There's pets, there's emotional support animals, we call them ESAs, and then there's service animals. Now, service animals, you know, they provide a function for somebody. If they're deaf, you know, it'll hear for them. It'll help guide them, you know, guide dogs. You need to treat service animals, and those typically are, you know, licensed, have a vest. You need to treat those like you treat somebody in a wheelchair. And that's the bottom line. You can't charge extra rent for those. You can't restrict those. You know, your renters can bring those into their units. Now, if the dog is, you know, out of control and creating a nuisance, that's a different issue, and you could deal with that even if it is a service animal. Then you have pets. You know, this is your dog or cat, and you know, you can restrict those. You need to be very careful how you do it. Tenants have pretty much caught on these days, and they're calling their pets emotional support animals. And so, because of that, we did get a law passed last year that kind of makes the allowance for emotional support animals a little more restrictive. In the past, you know, a tenant can literally bring you a letter from anybody. You know, it could be from their priest or a friend, and just says that, you know, need an emotional support animal, this person, and it doesn't have to explain the reason. Now in California, you know, the caregiver at least needs to have seen the person requiring the emotional support animal for 30 days. The caregiver needs to be licensed in the state of California. You could ask for a letter to prove it. What you can't do is you can't ask, well, why do you need a service animal? You know, there's HIPAA laws. You can't ask about anybody's physical or mental ailments, but there are a few more restrictions nowadays. And anybody who sells an animal as a service animal, they can't make promises to that effect, or they could be prosecuted. So at least we have a little bit more control over that. When you fly in an airline, it's different, right? They have different regulations under federal law. Eventually, you know, we're hopeful that we can get those types of laws here in California, because it is very challenging. Personally, if you ask me, and again, I'm not the world's largest landlord, but you know, I find it easier to rent to people with pets. People that have dogs are typically more responsible, I find. They stay in the units longer, and it makes your units more rentable, because it's hard to get landlords who are willing to accept dogs. On top of that, I have a Saint Bernard. I can't deny people applying for my units. She's 140 pounds, so I can never deny that. Another new law, if you're building a new multifamily property with 16 or more units, and by the way, the reason you see this number 16, if you're wondering, under California law, if you have 16 or more units, you're required to have an on-site manager at your property. If you own a property today and you don't have 16 or more units and you don't have an on-site manager there, you better get one pretty quickly. And if you have clients that have these properties without on-site managers, they better get them quickly. And know the employment laws, by the way. A lot of owners have been burned by so-called on-site managers, because you need to treat them like they're real employees. You need to tell them exactly what their duties are, what their hours of work are, and you need to track those hours. There's been so many claims made that have resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars in payments to on-site managers, because they claimed all types of overtime that had not been paid to them, and all kinds of wage law issues. And so you really need to follow the law. That's another thing that we provide to our members. By the way, we have all types of information in our forms library about that. If you do build a new building, by the way, that's 16 or more units, you need to provide EV chargers, electronic vehicle charges at those locations. I think it's a great idea, makes it much more convenient for renters at your building to have those chargers, but it's just another thing that runs up the cost of construction here in California. And then our legislators wonder why it's so expensive to rent an apartment here. This concept of reusable tenant screening reports, it was going to be made a requirement. Our association lobbied pretty hard and we got it made into an option. So what that is now tenant screening companies offer these reports that tenants can use for 30 days. And if they go and apply at multiple places, they could have the report sent to you by the screening company. And it's called a reusable screening report. You don't have to each property owner isn't allowed to necessarily request those. And again, those are optional. Right now, we suspect there will be a bill passed in the future making them mandatory. This is another issue that our state legislature did not preempt. And so a city like West Hollywood last year passed an ordinance that made these mandatory. So they have mandatory reusable tenant screening reports. Hopefully they're perfectly safe. While I'm on the subject of reusable screening reports, one of the things we're seeing, more exciting news for me, one of the things we're seeing more and more is we're seeing application fraud. And so you really need to scrutinize who the applicants are. You need to check their ID, make sure it's a real ID, not fake ID. And you need to be very, very careful. We're getting up in Ventura County, there's been a whole issue of people getting into apartment units, paying the first month's and a security deposit, and then conducting drug dealing in these apartments and never paying rent again. And it takes months to get them out, and they're there for free, and conducting criminal activities at these properties. And they're using all types of fake ID to get into these buildings. And there's all kinds of services now coming out. I hope to be able to offer one to our members soon, but there's all types of services where you can basically scan in a pay stub or a bank statement, other types of official documents, and they'll be able to tell you whether they're real or fake documents. And I actually used it once for me because I have a single family home I rent for a lot of money every month. And it was very comforting to know that the pay stubs I was being given were in fact true and accurate. And you can't rely on just calling a former landlord or an employer. You never know who you're talking to. So you really have to be smart about it and look up on the internet and see, is this really an employer? Is this the address, this person is saying that they work at, and so forth, and call the general number. Look up the general number and call that number, not some direct number that they give you, because you never know when you're calling a friend who might be in cahoots with them. LA County Affordable Housing Agency, unfortunately, this did pass. There was a similar bill for San Diego. Somehow the San Diegans got it defeated, but we weren't so lucky. So this is going to create a commission of, I think, 21 individuals who are going to create ways to build more affordable housing. And of course, they're going to be taxing us more for that pleasure. So we could look out and look forward for that. Low-income renters, if you qualify, you're allowed to have a pet in your unit, just so you're aware. There's this new bill passed, SB 1017. If you have a tenant under a month-to-month, long-term lease, whatever type of lease, if they've experienced any type of domestic violence or any type of violence, whether them personally, if they've been exposed to it through a significant other or someone in their family, whether that family member lives with them or not, they can give you notice to that effect and get out of their lease in 15 days. So that was just passed last year. One of the toughest ones to swallow was this SB 1477. It puts severe limitations on wage garnishments. And so if you're owed a bunch of COVID rent and your tenant, moved out or you evicted them, they owe you money and you want to try to chase those collections, you're probably not going to get it. If you do get a judgment and you are able to execute on that judgment, maybe attach a bank account or try to garnish some wages, you're severely limited on how much you can get from that person each month. And if you have a $10,000 judgment, I think some estimates are that it could take you 10 to 15 years to collect that, depending on how much the person who owes you the money, how much they make. And so that's a major problem. Throughout the COVID era, they like to call it, and while we were challenged to collect rent and we had all these eviction moratoriums in place, the one thing government promised us is that the rent is still owed and you'll collect your rent eventually. Well, this limitation on wage garnishments makes that literally impossible. And so what I've advised our members who are owed, tens of thousands of dollars in COVID rent is to just get a collection agency, not waste your money on attorneys, because that could be a black hole for you, and just hope for the best, but don't expect to ever collect it. So, I know from just being, CFO of corporations that it's very difficult to collect this stuff. And at some point, it's just not worth it. Not worth the misery and the time to go after this money. And so you just write it off. What I'd like to see people do, though, if they are writing off a debt like that, is to send a 1099 to this person if you have their social security number. I don't know, again, I don't want to give tax advice, but, let them deal with the IRS, if not with you, right? And but check with your tax advisor whether you can do that. And then we did advocate for, and we got a bunch of ADU streamlining bills. One of the ones that we're really happy with is this one that allows you to build at least up to 18 feet in height. It was originally 16 feet. So you had to be like my height to be able to live in that type of environment, but and up to 25 feet if the main residence is up to 25 feet. So that was at least a good one. And then, a bunch of these bad ideas and, state rental registry, those of us who live in different communities like Santa Monica and LA and so forth, we know about rental registries. Basically, you're opening up your tax returns to the government, and anybody who wants to, under a Freedom of Information Act, can get your financial information. And renters really don't like it either because, somebody sees how much they're paying for a unit, kind of, shows how much money they're making. And, people like to keep that stuff confidential, but they were looking for a statewide rental registry. So we were able to defeat that. There's a gross receipts tax on rental income, 25%, another crazy bill, crazy taxes. We had ban the box that got defeated again and again this year. I think this year was the fourth or fifth time that bill was attempted and beaten back. The state wanted us to change all of our lighting fixtures outside so they could accommodate LED lighting. Get rid of your old light bulbs and replace them with LED. And if the fixtures didn't work with LED, you'd have to replace them all. They were looking for us to make all types of energy efficiency disclosures about our properties, depending on the size. I look at our lease agreement today, and with the lead and the mold disclosures that we have to make and all the addendums, we're looking at over 100 pages now for a lease. You think a renter's reading all that stuff? There's no way. And then they wanted us to tack on these energy disclosures, which at least added another 20 to 25 pages. It's crazy. But we got that defeated. They were looking at requiring cooling units in multifamily dwellings. Now, again, not sure what kind of cooling, whether they're ceiling fans, window units, wall units, central air. We just didn't know. But that's going to be a continuing issue, especially with, all the concerns over global warming. And again, there were a couple bills proposed to prohibit use of credit history in the tenant screening process, which just makes being in this business far more risky. If you look locally, again, explosion of different types of rent regulations. Alhambra, recently banned evictions for substantial remodels. They want to create a more permanent ordinance there. And you could just go down the list. Does anybody have rental property in the city of Los Angeles here? Oh, you poor souls. I'll digress for a second. I hate to tell you this, but I run an apartment association. I sold my 4-unit building in the city of LA. I got the hell out of there. I saw this coming. Yeah. It was just before COVID hit. I did a 1031 exchange. Got a beautiful property overlooking the ocean in the Central Coast. So I'm much happier having people rent that type of property from me, less regulations. So You may know, this impacts really commercial, but in the city of LA, they passed this Measure ULA. That is a expensive real estate transfer tax. If you sell a property that's between $5 and $10 million in gross value, there's a 4% tax, and over $10 million is a 5.5% tax called Measure ULA. And what's happened, and by the way, it goes back to first dollar. So if you're going to sell a property right at 5 million, knock the price down $1 to 4,999,000, you get what I mean. So you don't have to pay the 4%, but it's made property sales at that level come to a grinding halt. And the city was expecting to generate some like $900 million in tax revenue to help build affordable housing and deal with the severe homelessness problems that are in the city of LA. And then they quickly knocked that down by a third to like 600 million. And I think so far it may have generated $50 million in tax revenue to the city. It's been a major problem. And everyone's complaining about it. People are pulling projects in the city of LA as a result of it. Our association, along with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, have sued the city of LA. We went to court for our first hearing. The district court judge wasn't into our argument, but we think he applied the law wrong. So we're going to continue the process and go through appeals, but we're going to keep fighting that. And as a backup, I'll go over a ballot initiative, which is our backstop on that, which would reverse Measure ULA and a number of other of these real estate transfer taxes that were recently passed. There's another one very similar in the city of Santa Monica this past year. There is some attempt in both LA County and the city of LA, and I know there's one actually in Beverly Hills to help small rental property owners out that may need some additional funding. And so in the city of LA, they're looking at putting up an $18 million fund. LA County was looking at $10 million, and I think they might be up to $20 million now. LA County doesn't have enough money to fund attorneys to provide defense to criminals, let alone find the money to help small landlords, but they're trying to do that. In LA City, and again, $20 million from LA County, 18 from LA City, it's really a drop in the bucket. It's not really enough to help the problem and all the hundreds of thousands or millions, billions of dollars of losses that property owners have experienced the past 3 years. Interesting thing about LA City, at the same time, they want to put up an $18 million fund to help small landlords. They want to spend far more than that on hiring private attorneys to go after landlords who may be trying to evict their tenants. And typically over 80% of evictions are due to non-payment, and over 90% some type of lease violation. So it just, I find it disconcerting where the city feels it needs to put their money. Have they, instead of funding private attorneys, if they would just put the money into a rental assistance fund. And if you look at the 3-day notices that get filed in the city of LA, because we're now required to file them with the city, the average rent outstanding is about $2,000 to $3,000. So the city would just take some of that lawyer money and help out tenants who may be struggling because they may have had major car issues or perhaps some medical issues or temporary job loss, and give them a few $1,000s a month for up to 6 months. That would go a long way, and we keep a lot more people housed, but instead they want to pay for attorneys. So keep that in mind next time you go to vote. And they were looking at cooling units in LA City as well. LA County, if you haven't properties in the unincorporated area, they just increased this 3% rent increase limit to 4% for the next 6 months. So you could tell your clients or yourself, you can increase rent by 4%. And, there's this whole host. Pasadena, you may have heard about the ballot initiative, Measure H. They're still trying to figure things out, but there's a 2.75% allowable rent increase at 75% of CPI in the city of Pasadena. They finally just declared that, and they're looking at all types of tenant protections to go into place. It's a rent control board that's completely unbalanced. I think it may have 1 or 2 rental property owners on it, and probably 7 renters who are on it, and there's a couple of independents. And they're just creating regulations to make life difficult for people in the rental property business. And now they're begging to be part of the city. They want to be a city department. Right now, they're a separate entity under no control by the city council or the city manager there whatsoever. And it was a measure that just barely passed by a group of renters unions that were able to get it on the ballot and were able to successfully pass it. It was defeated the first time and then unfortunately got headway this last time. And South Pasadena, Glendale, they're all talking about different types of renter protections and possible rent control initiatives. All right, well, in the city of LA, I'm just going to mention this because I know a lot of you don't own property in the city of LA, but I'm just going to mention this because you could possibly see this in cities that you have rental property in. In the city of LA, even though there's different properties that are not subject to the rent control ordinance, the city passed a ordinance covering non-rent controlled properties that says if you raise rent above a certain amount, your tenant can give you notice within 15 days that they cannot afford to pay that increased rent and they want to move out, and you get the pleasure of paying them 3 months of rent. And that applies whether they're in a non-rent controlled apartment building that may have been built recently or a mansion in Bel Air. If you're renting a mansion in Bel Air, you have this protection. We sued the city of LA on this ordinance. We just had a hearing on it. We got a preliminary ruling. The judge is not feeling it on eliminating this. Basically, we feel it's applying rent control to properties that are exempt from rent control under state law. It doesn't appear the judge is seeing it that way, but we will definitely take this one to the appeals process. And then this next one, before you could even initiate any type of eviction proceeding in the city of LA and also in the unincorporated areas of LA County and a number of other cities around LA County, you have to exceed an amount owed that's equal to what's called fair market rent, and that's determined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or as we like to know it as HUD. And so right now that's $1,700 and some change for a 1-bedroom and a little over $2,200 for a 2-bedroom. So you can't even give a 3-day notice unless that's the amount of rent that's owed to you at that time. And so what we've seen is, renters are smart. They're, short paying rent. If you pass along $100 increase to them because you're allowed to, then they don't have to pay it. And you can't do anything about it until, 17 months later, if it's $100, till they exceed the $1,700. This was also part of our recent lawsuit that we had a court hearing on, and the judge appears to be seeing it our way on that. So we're hopefully going to get this knocked out in LA City, and then we'll go after LA County and any other city that has imposed this. There's also some cities in Northern California that have these types of regulations, and we'll allow our affiliates up there to deal with their cities as well. There's been expansions of all types of just cause evictions. And again, if you're in a local jurisdiction or an unincorporated LA County that has what's called a just cause eviction law or ordinance, that means you cannot evict somebody unless it's stated in the law. So again, if you have a tenant on a month-to-month basis and you want them to leave, you got to have a reason for that. You just can't ask them to leave. You could, if you don't have that reason, you could offer, and I was explaining this to someone before, you can offer what's called cash for keys. It's a buyout, and you give them thousands of dollars, either in cash or you forgive some rent, let them live for free for a while, and you get your unit back. But barring those two methods, you're kind of stuck when you have these just cause eviction rules. And these rules are also at the state level. California, under its Tenant Protection Act, AB 1482, as we know it, has these same types of rules. And then if you file a 3-day notice, your tenant's protected unless you also do two things. Number one, you need to file the 3-day notice with the city. And we have some crafty landlord attorneys are telling landlords to mail them in, not to file them electronically, let the city deal with logging them and so forth. And then you also have to now disclose the number of bedrooms for whatever reason that are in the unit. If you don't do that, you go into court on an eviction, no matter how long the tenant's not paid you rent, the judge is going to throw it out. And so they create all these technicalities, these gotchas, these landmines, or whatever you want to describe them as. They keep on doing that more and more in all of these regulations. And, again, I tell people it's not a DIY, do-it-yourself business anymore. There's all these different layers of regulations, and you could really trip yourself up. So you really need to find yourself a competent attorney. And because we're coming out of the COVID era and because of the pent-up demand for evictions, these guys are really, really busy, but you need to get advice or join an apartment association. We could help you out to a certain extent. We won't give you legal advice. We'll tell you running a red light is illegal, but we won't tell you how to get out of the ticket, but we will give you a lot of help. I want to talk to you about some ballot initiatives. These are all very important. I'll take the top one first. It's the Taxpayer Protection Act. And this is an initiative. It actually was created a few years ago, and we just decided to get it qualified. I say we because our association is working with the California Business Roundtable on it and a number of other associations. But what this would do is it would hold elected officials more accountable for new taxes and fees. And there's some loopholes under state law. Most new taxes are supposed to be passed by a 2/3 majority, but there's this upland exemption that the California Supreme Court ruled on that allows certain taxes now to just be passed by a 50% majority. Well, this will tighten it up and it'll require a 2/3 majority. The great thing about it is it has a look back to the beginning of 2022. So measures like Measure ULA in the city of LA with the high transfer tax, the one in Santa Monica and a number of other cities will go away if this is to pass. And it also holds government officials accountable for bureaucrats that pass new fees. So if, sometimes city council will pass a new ordinance that says, well, it's our intention to do this, this, and this to our parks and facilities. And so the staff members then come up with a new fee schedule. This will require the city councils to vote on it and be held accountable for those types of things. And so it really protects all of our interests, all of the California taxpayers' interests. We hope to get this thing passed. The governor and the state legislature has filed a lawsuit against it. I don't think they're making much headway with the lawsuit. And they're also trying to throw in a ballot initiative for March. This is to be voted on in November 2024. They want to throw in a ballot initiative for March that requires that would require this to be passed by a 2/3 vote instead of a 50% majority. And the ballot initiative that they want to put forward in March basically says if you pass a ballot initiative that requires a 2/3 vote, then it has to be passed by a 2/3 vote, not a 50% vote. So it remains to be seen what will happen to it. But I hope and we don't have a number for this one yet, but I hope when you see it on the ballot, you guys will support it and vote for it and contribute to the campaign. Now, the Justice for Renters Act, we call it a rent control ballot initiative. If you're familiar with Propositions 10 from 2018, Proposition 21 from 2020. Basically, what this would do is it would eliminate a state law called the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act. That was passed in 1995. And what that act did is it exempted certain properties from local rent control. And those exemptions include single-family homes, newer properties, and also condominiums, and also ADUs. And it also allows us to charge whatever rent we want when we have a vacancy. So it resets the rent to market when you have turnover in your units. And this would undo that. And this would basically allow free rein to local cities. And cities like Santa Monica already have regulations on the books that if this Costa-Hawkins, the state law, goes away, they're going to immediately impose what we call vacancy control. And they're going to dictate how much you can charge when you have a vacant unit, irrespective of how below market that unit might be. And so, once again, and I'll pass the next slide. Once again, please contribute to the campaign, by the way, because once again, our industry needs to raise anywhere between $70 and $80 million to defeat it. The proponent is a guy named Michael Weinstein. He's the president and founder of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. What AIDS Healthcare is doing in our industry, I have no idea. The guy has been just recently as today in the LA Times, the guy was called a slumlord for a couple of apartment buildings that his organization owns downtown. But I understand he's a guy who grew up in New York in a rent control department. He believes that, rent control is the savior for society. And so he gets his nonprofit organization, which, behind the nonprofit wall is a major pharmaceutical company. And he puts up, anywhere from 25 to 35 million. So we need to raise at least 2 to 3 times that to defeat this once again. And it's a big waste of money. And, you wonder why rental in California costs so much, because we have to put up this much money all the time to defeat these bad initiatives. And we've done some polling. I didn't want to bring that and get into detail, but, so far the arguments we make, and many of them are similar to the past two ballot initiatives, the arguments we make are pretty solid. It looks like that we could definitely overcome this by similar majorities of about 60-40. Problem is we need money to get the message out. And so, I know through CAR is going to be a major contributor. Our association is trying to raise $5 million on its own just for our territory to help contribute to the statewide campaign. It's just very important. This could bankrupt our industry if it were to pass. And, you talk about slums and dilapidated buildings, this would definitely cause it, because owners could never keep up under these types of conditions. And it'd basically be a government takeover, because that's all who could afford to operate these properties. So big problem. All right. I want to go back a slide or two. If you didn't get the word, now I'm going back 2 years, or 4 years. Wow. It's been a long time, but if you didn't get the word by January 1st, 2025, you need to have your balconies inspected. And it's not just balconies. They're what's called elevated exterior elements or triple E's. And that could be anything that comes outside of the 4 walls of your building, more than 6 feet above, built out of wood that's built for a human to occupy. So it could be outside staircase. It could be just some kind of outside walkway at your building, not necessarily a balcony. So you need to be aware of that. You need to have these inspected. Right now, there's not a lot of local regulations around it. I know the city of LA, for instance, is looking at creating a local regulation, and they may want these balcony inspection reports to be sent into them at some point. At some point in the future, if you're refinancing your property or getting insurance, your lender or your insurance company may want to see these. So you have to get them done. The first one, like I said, is due January 1st, 2025, and then they're due every 7 years afterwards. And of course, it applies to 2 or more units. And there's certain types of contractors that are permitted to do these types of inspections. When the bill originally came out, the inspectors were prohibited from doing any work to fix the issues that they saw. And it was very difficult to find people because of that to do these inspections. But we got into meetings with the bill's author the next year, and we got a fix-it bill passed that allows the inspectors now to do the repairs. So if you've heard about this bill, people may still be under the misconception that the inspector cannot do the repairs, but they absolutely can, because our association initiated that and we were able to get it fixed. So that's a good thing. All right. Let me see what else I got for you. As I said, since I've been here in the last 6 years, particularly in the last 3 years, we filed about 7 lawsuits. We filed lawsuits over these eviction moratoriums. We filed lawsuits over all these tenant protection ordinances, Measure ULA. We filed a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles over its monopolistic trash hauling scheme, where they eliminated hundreds of trash haulers, cut it down to 6 trash haulers, gave them, monopolies in 6 different regions of the city, and everyone's trash bill went up 200 to 400%. So we sued over that. So we are very active, and we are always looking for contributions to our legal fund. If we have a cause of action that we think we could make some headway on, we're willing to go forward with it. So not bad for a small organization. We have 3 outstanding lawsuits today that we're involved in, and we're supporting a state lawsuit against the state of California over its eviction moratorium. We have a political action committee. I'm sure you guys do. Ours is very important. A lot of the fundraising is now going towards the defeat of the rent control ballot initiative. And we're also going to be raising money to try to get some of our elected officials unelected. in various cities who cause all kinds of problematic regulations and harms against us. And if you want to follow us, I'd love for you guys to join, but if you can't do that, it is about $174 a year. Plus, if you have a lot of units, there's a little bit more, but it's not too bad. It's like the price of a good dinner and a decent bottle of wine on Saturday night, I like to say. But you can follow us. You can sign up for our email blasts on our website. We do put out a lot of information, what we call red alerts, warning people about upcoming votes on regulations and a call to action. We have news alerts that tell you what happened afterwards and when these new regulations may or may not go into effect. And then we have tons of different programs, both online and in person, that we invite people to attend. But, I like to think we provide a lot of benefit for people in this business. And for vendors, we have a lot of opportunities to get in front of our members. And we always help you make your phones ring. And we have an expo every year out here in Pasadena in May, so you should look for that and attend it. Last year, we had about 200 different vendors that service our industry, and we had, I think, 12 speakers, including the county assessor who kicked it off with me, and really well-attended expo. We had over 2,000 people show up in person last year, so I encourage you to attend that as well. And thank you. How'd I do on time? Was that too long? Sorry, you could have pulled out the hook. But all right, thanks. We got a lot more of it for you. If you guys want to, come to some of our events, we'd welcome that. But you want me to take questions or let people go? Okay. All right, I have business cards if you want to reach out to us, and you are welcome to send out this PowerPoint in a PDF to anybody who would like it.
That would be perfect, because that was when I was on the side, everybody was approaching me about your PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. On behalf of the West and Gable Valley Realtors, we would like to thank Dan Yukelson for being our guest speaker twice in one day and for your informative presentation. We have a small token of our appreciation with this certificate. I was hoping to maybe get a snapshot with you, a quick pic.
Thank you, everybody. I'll display it proudly at my desk.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks.
All right, this concludes our session. Thank you so much for coming.